There's a formidable level of mental and physical strength that doesn't just make you capable, it makes you seem truly invincible. Today, you're about to uncover the journey of a man who achieved this profound mastery 400 years ago in feudal Japan, and, more importantly, how you can cultivate the very same resilience in your own life. Have you ever encountered someone who simply doesn't break under pressure? Someone who confronts any challenge, any adverse situation, without a flicker of hesitation, without ever backing down, and crucially, without negotiating with their own resolve? While others around them are crafting elaborate excuses for their failures, or surrendering at the slightest obstacle, this individual persists with unshakable determination. And you know what the common refrains are? That guy's just lucky. She's only like that because of her superior genetics. He only got ahead because he's connected to the boss. Yet, what many people refuse to acknowledge is the exceptionally high price that must be paid for such fortitude. Most are unwilling to endure that cost, yet they readily judge and criticize those who stand firm on the battlefield of life. However, amidst the tumultuous Tokugawa era in Japan, there lived an extraordinary man. This legendary figure emerged victorious from over 60 duels, commencing his journey at the tender age of 13 and never suffering a single defeat. If you're a regular follower of this channel, you likely already know his identity. Perhaps his name even graces the title of this video, so it's hardly a secret. His name was Miyamoto Musashi. He wasn't renowned for being the physically strongest or the swiftest warrior of his time. Instead, he cultivated something far more formidable, a spirit that was utterly unbreakable, a mind that knew no hesitation, and a body that defied all perceived limits. Before his passing, he meticulously documented his profound insights in his seminal work, Gorin no Sho, the Book of Five Rings. Within its pages lies the precise blueprint, a veritable map, for how to forge your own mind and body into something that will inspire others to look on in awe, wondering, how is that even humanly possible? But there's a critical distinction to grasp. Musashi's methodology isn't centered on motivation. It is profoundly about elimination. He didn't accumulate strength by adding more to his life. Rather, he built it by systematically stripping away everything that stood in the way of his true potential. Before I reveal the exact mechanics of this transformative system, I invite you to become part of our community by subscribing to the channel, giving this video a like, and leaving a comment below. What is the single biggest mental or physical weakness you are determined to eliminate from your life? Your engagement truly helps this channel reach and empower more individuals, and I genuinely enjoy reading and interacting with all your insightful comments. Thank you immensely for your attention. Now let's dive back into the video. Chapter 1. The Awakening. The compelling story I'm about to share with you today begins with a man named Lucas. He's a 32-year-old engineer, married with 2 children in every sense, an ordinary guy leading an ordinary life, grappling with ordinary problems. But Lucas carried a particular, pervasive problem. He was weak. And this wasn't merely a physical deficit. His mental fortitude was equally fragile. Each morning, he'd awaken with sincere promises to exercise. He bought gym memberships 3 times, only to cancel every single one. He'd embark on a strict diet on Monday, only to abandon it by Wednesday. He swore he'd rise early, but inevitably, he'd hit the snooze button 7 times over. The pattern was relentlessly consistent. Strong intention, utterly weak execution. And his personal struggles weren't the only concern. When faced with adversity at work, he'd completely freeze up. When a difficult conversation with his wife became necessary, he'd perpetually defer it. And when his children required guidance, correction, or lessons in discipline and values, he'd habitually delegate it all to her. Lucas was effectively living on autopilot, merely reacting to life's currents, never proactively steering his own course. This passive existence continued until the day he suffered a debilitating panic attack directly in front of his boss. In the midst of a crucial meeting, his heart began to race uncontrollably. His hands grew clammy with sweat, and the entire room started to spin. He was forced to abruptly excuse himself. He sought medical attention, and the subsequent tests revealed no underlying physical issues. The diagnosis was unequivocal: severe stress, anxiety, and a profound lack of mental fitness. It was then that the doctor delivered a statement that fundamentally altered Lucas's perspective. Your body is reacting to threats that simply don't exist because your mind is untrained to differentiate between genuine danger and mere discomfort. You need to train your nervous system. Upon returning home, Lucas immediately plunged into researching how one might truly train the mind, how to cultivate authentic mental strength. It was during this intense search that he stumbled upon the teachings of Miyamoto Musashi. More specifically, he discovered that Musashi hadn't simply authored a philosophical treatise. He had meticulously penned a practical manual of warfare, directly applicable to the battles of everyday life. Chapter 2. The Principle of Elimination. The very first concept Lucas encountered in the Book of Five Rings struck him as profoundly contradictory. Have no preferences. Do not depend on any particular weapon. Initially, he simply couldn't grasp it. How could one possibly become strong without developing a preference? How could true mastery be achieved without relying on a chosen tool? Then came Musashi's illuminating explanation. Your strength cannot be contingent upon perfect conditions. If your ability to train is solely dependent on having specific equipment, then you are inherently weak. If you can only find calm through meditation in absolute silence, you are weak. If your focus is tied solely to being perfectly rested, you are weak. True strength, Musashi asserted, is the unwavering capacity to perform optimally under any and all conditions. Musashi himself practiced relentlessly with wooden swords, metal swords, wielding two swords, then one sword, and even no sword at all. He engaged in combat training day and night, under the blazing sun, through torrential rain, in the biting cold, and in oppressive heat. Why? Because, as he understood, the enemy doesn't pause to wait for you to be perfectly ready. Lucas had a stark realization. He was the absolute antithesis of this ideal. He could only achieve productivity within the confines of his office. He could only exercise if he had enjoyed a full night's sleep. He could only maintain a healthy diet if his wife had painstakingly prepared his meals. Every facet of his supposed discipline was entirely dependent on external factors. So, following Musashi's profound teaching, Lucas began a deliberate process. He eliminated dependencies. It started small with push-up training. No gym equipment was required, no specific schedule, nothing but his own body and the floor beneath him. He committed to performing 20 push-ups every single day, anytime, any place, regardless of the conditions. The first week proved relatively easy. By the second week, however, his body began to ache with a persistent soreness. In the third week, he had to travel for work. And in the fourth week, he succumbed to the flu. This was precisely the point where, in the past, he would have invariably given up. But this time, he vividly recalled Musashi's principle. Practice must continue, utterly regardless of circumstances. Traveling for work, push-ups were done in the hotel room. Battling a cold, he'd perform 10 push-ups instead of 20. Feeling utterly drained of energy, he'd manage 5 push-ups, but crucially, never 0. Chapter 3, Kaizen, the Still Mind. By day 40, Lucas was performing his daily push-ups almost automatically, but his mind remained a chaotic mess. It was plagued by anxiety about work, persistent worry about money, and the gnawing fear of disappointing his family. While he was undeniably growing stronger physically, mentally, he was still profoundly fragile. It was then that he encountered a concept Musashi considered even more vital than any specific fighting technique. Kaizen, the everyday mind. The mind that remains utterly unchanged amidst turmoil. Musashi wrote, "At the moment of battle, your mind should be precisely the same as your mind when you are peacefully drinking tea. No excitement, no fear, just pure presence." How, Lucas wondered, could this possibly be true? How could one remain perfectly calm when someone was actively trying to kill you? Musashi's answer was brutally simple. You train your mind not to react. You don't merely suppress fear. You cultivate a state of being where you no longer need to react to fear. Lucas began to rigorously test this principle. Every time he felt anxiety surge, whether stuck in traffic, navigating a difficult meeting, or embroiled in an argument with his wife, he would do one thing. He'd take a deep breath and observe the sensation without reacting to it. It sounds deceptively simple, but initially, it was sheer torture. His body instinctively yearned to scream, to argue, to flee, but he simply watched. My heart is racing. My hands are sweating. My jaw is tense. Just observation. No judgment, no reaction. The first true breakthrough occurred during a meeting where his boss began to yell at him in front of everyone. His old pattern would have been to freeze, to sweat profusely, to stutter uncontrollably. This time, Lucas felt the familiar surge of fear, recognized it, and yet continued speaking normally. His voice remained steady, his hands didn't sweat, and he responded with remarkable clarity. His boss was visibly confused, and the team was utterly shocked. But Lucas knew exactly what had transpired. For the first time, he had accessed Hijishin, the mind that simply doesn't move. A neuroscientist from Stanford University who has dedicated 18 years to studying emotional regulation clarifies this phenomenon. When you consistently practice non-reactive observation of challenging emotions, you are quite literally rewiring your amygdala. Over time, the activation threshold increases. What once triggered a full-blown panic response now elicits only a calm recognition. Chapter 4. Sanai, the Way of the Warrior. But Musashi keenly understood that a calm mind, unsupported by a capable body, is nothing more than an illusion. You can possess flawless emotional control, but if your physical form cannot withstand the demands, you will ultimately fail. He wrote, "Train diligently with wooden swords to strengthen the body. For when the body is weak, the mind falters. But when the body is strong, the mind remains steadfast and firm." Lucas had been diligently performing push-ups for 60 days. He had undoubtedly grown stronger, but he hadn't yet truly tested his physical limits under extreme conditions. Musashi never trained in comfort. He pushed himself to the absolute brink, and then went beyond. Inspired by this, Lucas decided to undertake something that many would deem insane: 100 push-ups every day for 30 consecutive days. No matter how long it took, no matter how many brief pauses he needed, he was determined to complete all 100, every single day. Day 1 required a grueling 45 minutes. By day 5, he could barely lift his arms. On day 10, his wife expressed concern, telling him he was overdoing it. Yet, by day 15, he completed 100 push-ups in a remarkable 20 minutes. And by day 30, he achieved them in just 12 minutes without a single stop. But what truly transformed wasn't just his body, it was profoundly his mind. When you unequivocally prove to yourself that you can achieve something that once seemed utterly impossible, you stop wrestling with the difficulty. You simply do it. Musashi referred to this as Sanai, the Way of the Warrior. It's not about inherent talent. It's about systematically eliminating the deeply ingrained belief that there's anything you cannot accomplish if you commit to training hard enough. Chapter 5. Zanshin, Permanent Awareness. Lucas was now physically stronger and mentally calmer. However, Musashi articulated a third principle that fundamentally distinguished ordinary warriors from legends. Zanshin. Literally translated, it means the mind that remains. This isn't about being perpetually tense or hyper-alert. It signifies being perpetually present, always aware, never disconnected from your surroundings or yourself. Musashi recounted tales of warriors who, having won a duel, let down their guard and were then fatally attacked while celebrating their victory. He stated, "The battle does not conclude when the enemy falls. Concludes only when you are truly safe." Zanshin is that unwavering consciousness that does not relax until everything is genuinely and completely resolved. Lucas soon recognized that he had been living the exact opposite of this principle. He would finish a project and immediately relax entirely, switching off completely. He would achieve a goal and abruptly cease his training. He would solve one problem, only to ignore the telltale signs of the next one emerging. He then began to integrate Zanshin into his daily life. After completing his push-ups, instead of collapsing onto the floor, he would stand for 30 seconds, consciously breathing and practicing mindfulness. After a challenging meeting, instead of immediately checking his phone for distraction, he would sit for a minute, quietly processing what had transpired. These actions seemed minor, but their cumulative effect was transformative. When you sustain awareness after the action, you deeply integrate the learning. When you immediately tune out, you inevitably lose the profound lessons. Within 90 days, a complete metamorphosis had occurred within Lucas. His colleagues at work started to comment, "You seem different. You're much more present, man. Nothing seems to faze you anymore." His wife, ever direct, simply asked, "What happened to you? You seem like a different person." And she was right, he was fundamentally different. Chapter 6, Fudoshin, the immovable mind. But the ultimate crucible, the true test, arrived on day 105. Lucas was summoned to an emergency meeting. The company was undergoing significant cuts, and he was informed he was going to be fired. The old Lucas would have plunged instantly into a spiraling panic. Heart racing, mind awash with catastrophic scenarios, utterly overwhelmed. But this time, something profoundly different transpired. He felt the initial shock, certainly. He recognized the sensation of potential fear, and then nothing. His mind simply did not react. His body did not surge into fight or flight mode. He was simply present with the information. "I see," he responded. "What's the timeline?" His boss was visibly taken aback by Lucas's composed demeanor. "You have 30 days. I'm truly sorry, Lucas." "Okay," Lucas calmly replied. "Thank you for letting me know." Lucas exited the room, returned to his desk, and continued working. Meanwhile, his colleagues who had been laid off alongside him were in sheer panic. They were making frantic calls home, crying, paralyzed by the news. Lucas, however, remained profoundly calm. Not because he didn't care about the situation, but because he had meticulously developed what Musashi termed Fudoshin, the immovable mind. It is the mind that remains utterly unshaken, unperturbed by external circumstances. Musashi famously wrote, "The tree stands quiet, not because of the absence of wind, but because its roots run deep." Lucas's roots had indeed grown incredibly deep. 105 days of flawless training. 105 days of observing emotions without succumbing to reaction. 105 days of continuous, deliberate awareness. When the storm of job loss hit, he didn't break because he had, in essence, already been tested and fortified 1,000 times through his consistent practice. Over the subsequent 30 days, while everyone else was gripped by panic, Lucas was decisively in action. He updated his resume, activated his professional network, and went on a series of interviews. By the 23rd day, he had 3 promising job offers on the table. He selected the best one, leaving his old company not only with a new opportunity but also earning a substantial 40% more. His former colleagues who had succumbed to panic? Many were still unemployed 3 months later. A prominent sports psychologist who has spent 15 years working with Olympic athletes explains the crucial distinction. The difference between those who excel under pressure and those who crumble isn't talent. It's the sheer amount of time they have spent deliberately exposing themselves to discomfort. Resilience isn't a trait you possess. It's a robust capacity you build, repetition by repetition. Chapter 7, Hyo-Ho, the strategy of void. But Musashi held one final principle, perhaps the most challenging to fully grasp, yet the most powerfully transformative to apply. Hyo-Ho, the strategy of emptiness or void. He wrote, "In combat, do not intend to win, intend not to lose." This might sound like the same objective, but it is fundamentally different. When your sole focus is on winning, you tend to create openings. You push too aggressively, you expose yourself unnecessarily, you risk too much. Conversely, when your primary intention is not to lose, you remain whole, without exploitable gaps, without inherent weaknesses. Lucas began to apply this profound strategy to his new job. Instead of trying to impress everyone immediately and aggressively demonstrate his value, he simply focused on not making mistakes. He arrived punctually, consistently delivered on his promises, avoided creating any workplace drama, and never made commitments he couldn't keep. 3 months later, he earned a promotion. His boss remarked, "Lucas, you might not be the absolute brightest on the team, but you are undoubtedly the most reliable. And reliability, in our experience, consistently trumps brilliance." That is Hyo-Ho in action. You don't necessarily have to be the best. You simply have to possess no discernible weaknesses. Musashi never lost a duel, not because he was physically superior or blindingly fast. He never lost because he never presented an opening. He meticulously studied his opponent, patiently waited for a critical error, and then executed with absolute efficiency and zero wasted motion. Lucas began to apply this potent principle to every area of his life. In his diet, he didn't strive for perfection. He simply never ate junk food. In his training, he didn't chase records. He simply never skipped a day. In his relationships, he didn't attempt to be the perfect husband. He simply never broke his word. No weaknesses, no loopholes, no excuses. Chapter 8. Tsutomi, letting go of the self. 6 months into his transformative journey, Lucas was virtually unrecognizable. Physically stronger, mentally unbreakable, and emotionally stable. But he encountered one final, subtle barrier. He was still haunted by a fear, not of external threats, but of something internal. He feared that if he paused his rigorous practice for even a single day, everything he had built would crumble. He was afraid that all this newly acquired strength was fragile, merely temporary. It was then that he confronted Musashi's ultimate concept, Tsutomi, the abandoning of the self. Musashi penned his final words shortly before his death, declaring, "I regret nothing, I fear nothing, I desire nothing." How does one ascend to this extraordinary level of detachment? How does one completely abandon the grip of fear? Musashi's answer was, perhaps, his most radical. You cease identifying with the outcome. You are not your successes. You are not your failures. You are simply the continuous, unwavering practice. Lucas tested this principle in an extreme manner. He stopped counting his training days. He stopped celebrating milestones. He ceased posting his progress on social media. He systematically removed all forms of external validation. The training continued. The meditation continued. The discipline continued. But now it was without ego, without the craving for recognition, and crucially, without the gnawing fear of losing what he had painstakingly built. Because he finally grasped a profound truth. You cannot lose what you are. You can only lose what you have. If your strength is predicated on maintaining an unbroken streak, you will live in fear of breaking it. But if your strength is defined by who you have become, then absolutely nothing can ever take that away from you. And it was at this precise moment that something rather unsettling began to occur. People started to avoid Lucas, not because he had become arrogant or aggressive, but because his very presence felt uncomfortable. When you successfully eliminate fear, hesitation, and the desperate need for external validation, you inadvertently become a mirror. People look at you and see everything they are not, and that stark reflection can be deeply unsettling. His coworkers stopped complaining when he was around. His friends ceased making jokes about gyms and diets in his presence. Even his own family started commenting, "You're getting too serious," because his very existence now powerfully demonstrated that everything they claimed was impossible was, in fact, merely uncomfortable. Chapter 9. The Complete Transformation. A full year after commencing his profound journey, Lucas was no longer simply Lucas. Not in the sense that his fundamental personality had changed, but in the sense that he had meticulously stripped away everything that was inessential to his core. He was no longer merely someone who tried to be disciplined. He had become someone who couldn't be undisciplined. Practice wasn't merely something he did. It was inherently who he was. Musashi referred to this integrated state as Kenzen Ichi. The sword and Zen are one. There is no longer any separation between your identity and your practice. You don't just meditate. You are meditation. You don't just train, you are training. People would ask him, "How do you possess so much discipline?" His answer was strikingly simple. "I have no discipline. I've merely eliminated the parts of myself that wanted to give up." This is the ultimate teaching of Miyamoto Musashi. True mental and physical strength isn't about accumulating more things, more techniques, or more affirmations. It's about rigorously removing everything that obstructs the path of your essential, unburdened nature. You don't need to consciously motivate yourself to breathe. Do you? You don't need to force your heart to beat. Why? Because these are fundamental, essential aspects of who you are. When your training, your discipline, and your daily practices become as deeply integrated and effortless as breathing, you have reached that unsettling, awe-inspiring level. The level where people look at you and genuinely think, that's not human. And the truth is, they're right. It's not human in the sense of normal human, but it is profoundly human in the sense of realized human potential. Miyamoto Musashi passed away at the age of 62, alone in a cave, engrossed in writing. He possessed no wealth, no formal titles, and no followers in his final days. Yet, he possessed something that no one could ever take from him: complete and absolute mastery over himself. His final recorded words were, "I regret nothing." How many individuals, at the culmination of their lives, can genuinely utter such a powerful statement? How many people reach their end knowing they lived to the absolute limit of their capabilities? How many have truly eliminated fear, hesitation, and profound weakness? The crucial question isn't how did Musashi accomplish this? The profound question is, why aren't you doing it? You possess access to the same timeless knowledge. You have the same number of hours available to you in each day. You inhabit the same human body, imbued with the exact same boundless potential. The defining difference isn't ability. It's the unwavering willingness to undertake what is necessary, a willingness to systematically eliminate dependencies, a willingness to engage in practice until practice itself becomes your very identity, a willingness to ruthlessly abandon everything that isn't absolutely essential. This daunting level of mental and physical strength is certainly not for everyone. Not because it's inherently impossible to achieve, but because the path to it is deeply uncomfortable. And regrettably, most people consistently choose transient comfort over enduring capability. But you, watching this right now, you are not part of the majority. If you've stayed with this video this far, you have already definitively proven that. The question now before you is, what are you genuinely going to do with this transformative information? If you found value in this video, I urge you to subscribe to the channel, activate that notification bell, and give it a thumbs up. And please, share in the comments below. What is the very first addiction you are committed to eliminating? What is the first weakness you are determined to transform? Remember, the kind of strength that subtly, yet powerfully, unnerves others is often the only strength truly worth having. If you've made it to this point, thank you so much for your undivided attention. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.